Hey guys, this is Jack with Midheaven Vanguard reporting to you from Midheaven HQ with a competitive Daiyusha deck profile. So we're just going to go right into it. First things first, Daiyusha's entire thing is that he wants to superior ride. This is the ride line. The ride line is all about your superior ride, having Dailander, Daidragon, Daiyusha, Die Battles, and Die Mariner are what you need to get up to grade 3 when you're on grade 2. So, these are important because as soon as you play Dailander, you're going to find a base. That base is going to search one of those pieces for you. Personally, I'd like to throw Die Battles in first because if I see Die Mariner, then he puts himself into Soul, and that's just a guaranteed superior ride, and that is going to set me up for the rest of the game. I mentioned the bases, so we'll go ahead and talk about them because they are just the entire heart and soul of this deck. These are where all of the decision making in the deck are. They're going to gain you energy, they're going to get you things out of drop into soul, and they're going to get your robots out onto the field. They're going to help you build a board without using anything from hand if you can help it. So these, if you can get them out, they're going to save your bacon more times than you're ever going to be able to count. The grade 3 suite is all Persona rides. It's Daiyusha. It's the main man himself. So, not too much to speak on in the grade 3 department, but, I mean, the Vanguard is going to be the most important unit, so let's talk about him for a second. His whole thing is that when he attacks, you can counterblast one, you can draw a card, that pluses you in hand, and that gives your units power as long as your opponent is on grade 3. Your units do have to be unique dimensional robos, and thankfully your bases will help you facilitate that. So whenever you attack, you can put a card into Soul, preferably a robot, and restand him for another attack with no drives, unless you're able to unless you're able to bind Daiyusha from Soul, which will give you a once per game extra drive check, which is super useful. And that is mostly how you're going to be applying pressure or gaining cards into your hand during the mid to late game. So that is your pseudo divine skill. Very, very powerful tool in your deck, and I think that it's a very, very fun decision to have to make in the middle of a game. So we'll go ahead and move on to the grade 2 suites. Starting with arguably your most important grade 2, this is going to be Die Lady, and Die Lady is massive. Die Lady is going to mostly be played from hand. She is one of the only robos that doesn't have a skill when she is called from Soul, and when you call her either from Soul or from your hand, it doesn't matter here. You can counterblast one and search for a base, which, as I mentioned before, super important. You're going to want to see Die Lady. Another important thing about Die Lady is that if you see her in your opening hand, this is, as long as you have the counterblast for it, a guaranteed route to your superior ride. She's also going to gain power whenever your opponent is on grade 3, and that is just a massive oppressive force whenever you have Daiyusha, also giving her even more power when she is unique and the only one on your rearguard circle. We'll move on to the next grade 2. This is Daidragon. It's a bit controversial to run Daidragon in the main deck. We have him in the ride line. I keep another one in the main deck because he is just so defensive. Not only is he defensive, but he can also be another unit that gains power. The reason that I find him so important is because he is just an extra card I don't have to take out of hand. Whenever he is called out from Soul, which by the way happens automatically when you ride up to grade 3, he gains his red text, which gives him 15k shield to give to your Vanguard whenever you retire it. If your Vanguard's being attacked, of course. He also gains 5,000 power when you call him out, compounded with the 5,000 power that he gains from your Vanguard. He is a force to be reckoned with. I love this thing. It's going to be hard to convince me to take it out of my deck if new support comes out. It has saved me more times than I can count, and it is a super, super important unit to have. Just kind of in the sidelines, in the backup. If you lost the one from your ride line, then at least you have the extra one in the deck, just in case your opponent is about to throw 7 attacks at you. We'll move on. This is Panspermia. It is one of the first generic supports that we've seen in the deck so far, but I feel comfortable running him because you end up with just a little bit of excess energy. Your bases can energy charge you, and you can be pretty efficient. Panspermia is going to be good because he is a cycler. He cycles. He's also going to be good for defense. You can use him to energy blast and draw a card when you are defending, and in a pinch, you can play him to Rearguard Circle during a Persona Ride turn, and you can find yourself a base, and that is just so valuable. In the future, he'll be able to search other grade 3 supports, but for now, he is still just super important. I will run him at 4. He is just that good in the deck. Next is Surga and Dargage, probably one of the most optional pieces in the deck, but personally, I adore this card. I have used it so many times to look for cards off the top of my deck and just for free charge in a Robo. You can also counterblast one to retrieve either a base or a Persona Ride from your soul, which is also extremely useful. Just at locals last week, I managed to get to my Superior Ride only because she managed to charge my Die Mariner that I needed and completely saved my life in that game and got me the momentum that I needed to succeed. So Surga and Dargage, while not absolutely imperative to the deck, really plays to its strengths, and I'm a big fan of this card, and it's one of my favorites to have. We'll go ahead and move on to the grade 1s now. This is arguably your most important piece. It is another Robo. This is the one that facilitates your Superior Ride while it is in the soul. It is also the one that gives you the most pressure without a doubt. If you call out die battles from the soul, it gives your Vanguard a critical and also acts as a booster wherever you place it. And of course, as always, it gains power from your Vanguard's ability. I run 2, some people run 1, but if 1 hits the damage zone, then that is just a game over for me. I really rely on the pressure that this gives, and it's to the point where if I am between a strong attacker and this guy in the front row, he's going to gain power anyway with my Vanguard's ability, so why not call him to the front row, give my Vanguard a crit, and just go for it. This wins you games. This is your piece. This is your best friend in this deck, and I think it is absolutely worth running 2 of it. So, moving on. This is Die Mariner. Die Mariner is also very important. Whenever you discard it to ride, he will put himself into soul, and that facilitates your Superior Ride. Another thing it does is it completely shuts off intercepts, which, when you're attacking with a Vanguard who just gave power to everybody and has a crit on it, that's pretty darn important. Another really cool thing that he does is that if you call him out from soul, he gains 2,000, and suddenly he is a pseudo grade 2 attacker. So you don't have to make very many sacrifices at all when you're calling out a grade 1 from your soul. That's super important. He is just a very good, solid piece for consistency. Maybe you don't see your bigger attackers, maybe you don't see your more defensive pieces, but at the very least, well, now you shut off intercepts and you have an attacker that is on par with any other deck's regular grade 2 attackers. So this is pretty well worth running at 3, in my opinion. Also, at 3, we have Galactic B Hero, Badash Burstin. For a lot of people, this one is a no-brainer. Every single turn, you're going to be using Counterblast for your Vanguard, you're going to be using Counterblast for your Die Lady, and having a Countercharger is going to make that decision-making just a whole lot easier on your part and make your lines of play much smoother. Also, he gains power when you have a base, so this is a 10k booster. That's just flat out better than Mobile Mine. That's also extra soul for your more defensive options that you can use to spend later, and extra resources are never a bad thing. Extra soul, extra countercharge, it's just good. It's fantastic. Speaking of those defensive options, we have 4 perfect guards. We've elected not to run Elementaria here because Elementaria Sanctitude, being an order, kind of hinders your decision making when it comes to the other options that you have in the deck. If I want to play another Blitz order during my turn to be defensive, then I'm kind of out of luck once I played Elementaria, and it ended up being a brick in my hand more than anything else. So not very much a fan of that. The Blitz order in question is Freezing Wave, which is, for lack of a better word, absolutely insane. This card is my saving grace, my bread and butter, the wind beneath my wings. If you have bases and you've rested them, which I hope you have, this card is going to give you 10,000 power for each of them rested during your opponent's attack and your guard phase. This card is just the way that you protect yourself. If you play this and then you have a Die Dragon, then you are just... You're a tank, basically. This deck is completely and utterly tanky and defensive because of cards like Freezing Wave and Die Dragon. So generally, your line of play is going to be pretty simple from the very beginning. You're going to want to see either Die Mariner, you're going to want to see a base in your hand, or maybe even a Die Lady. All of those are going to facilitate your superior ride into grade 3. You can do that at any point while you're on grade 2, as long as your opponent is also on grade 2. And even into the next turn, even if you happened to go first and your opponent wasn't on grade 2 while you were, then on the next turn, you don't have to discard to go into grade 3. You can just put a robot into soul, and then suddenly you're grade 3, and then you haven't lost that resource. So Daiyusha is going to be a very fast, very aggressive, and very powerful deck. The trigger lineup facilitates that. Obviously, we're going to run Elder Breath. If you are attacking with a crit on your Vanguard right off the bat, checking this puts you at 4. And that is just too good to pass up. It's going to double the power and crit of all your other units. And when you're getting that third drive check during your pseudo divine skill, then this is just going to be extremely powerful if you happen to check it. And with the rate that you're thinning out your deck, you're probably going to check this. So moving on, we're going to go ahead and look at the rest of the trigger lineup. We've decided not to compromise. I'm running 3 front triggers and 2 draw triggers. To further thin out the deck, the draw triggers are just invaluable, and to give power to my front row, front triggers are not a bad look. And we are able to run this particular lineup because I've cut criticals down to 6, where normally I'd probably want to run 8. I'm able to justify running 6 critical triggers because every single turn my Vanguard is going to have a critical on it, as long as I'm able to see my die battles. And this makes it so that I'm consistent, I always have my critical anyway, and I'm able to get power gain with my extra critical, even if I don't happen to see a critical trigger. If I do see a critical trigger, I can either put it on my Vanguard, I can put it on a rear guard, and everything's just got pressure all the time, always, even with this lower amount of critical triggers. It's very oppressive, and very, very consistently so. We are, of course, running 4 heal triggers. That is a no-brainer. They're not effect triggers, they're just going to be vanillas. We need that 15k shield. This, along with the extra power that we get from the front triggers, just contributes even more to the deck's defense. This was not a hard decision to make. So that is generally how I'm going to run Daiyusha. I've seen massive amounts of success with this build, and I'm very, very satisfied with it. It's very fun to play. The decision making is engaging, and I just have so much fun playing this. I'm able to stand up toe-to-toe comfortably with matchups like Shoujo Doji and Varga and Shiranui, and even win those games I've topped at almost every single local tournament that I've played, and those players are definitely nothing to sneeze at. It's a very defensive deck. It gives you so many lines of play and so much room for versatility, so much room to pivot. You can make any decision to either set yourself up for defense or set yourself up for offense at the drop of a hat, and it's honestly just very freeing. It's a very, very freeing, very fun deck to play, very versatile in its execution, and very difficult to kind of get stuck on. You're never pigeonholed into just one decision. There's always something that you can do in order to move your momentum forward. So thank you for tuning in and checking out our Daiyusha deck profile. As always, I am Jack with Midheaven Vanguard. If you liked this, make sure you like and subscribe, and tune in for even more fight videos and deck profiles and just general japery with Cardfight Vanguard. As always, keep those crits stacked and have a good evening. Thank you.